Welcome to the Darkstream. I'm VoxDay, voxday.blogspot.com, and Infogalactic News. First of all, happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. You know, that's what I wanted to talk about today. I'm a father myself. I've known a father. I've known a grandfather. And what I can say is that for me, as for most men, my father and my maternal grandfather are the two men who have probably had the greatest impact on me throughout my life. You know, now the interesting thing for me was that my grandfather was not actually my blood grandfather. He adopted he was actually at war when my mother was born, and but she was raised by him from the time he came back from the war, and she was 5. And what was interesting was that she was so close to him that she absolutely refused to acknowledge, think about, or tell any of her children that her father was not her actual father and that he was not our actual grandfather. And frankly, when we found out, which was not until after his death, it didn't make any impact on any of me or my brothers. You know, as far as we were concerned, you know, he was and still is our grandfather. I was actually named for him. So, you know, what did I learn from them? You know, from my grandfather, I learned the importance of courage and honor. And I learned that honor is something that is a subjective thing. You know, what is honor for you is not honor for somebody else. I learned not to place any value on what other people might think, because other people's perspectives are not your own. The information they have is not the same as what you have. You know, specifically for me, the real lesson was when I had been arrested for a fairly minor crime. And it was the sort of thing that, it was during college, and my family had, at the time, you know, my family was very wealthy, and we had a full-time lawyer. You know, he handled everything. And there was not very much question that if I called my parents, who were living in England at the time, and told them about it, that, you know, the lawyer would be out on the next flight, everything would get fixed. And you know how it is when you know, people are from wealthy families and whatnot. So I went down to my grandparents. They lived in Alexandria, Virginia. And I was talking to my grandfather, and I said, so, you know, here's the situation. I've got a situation. Should I let my parents know about it? And my grandfather didn't ask me any questions about the specifics or anything, nor will I entertain questions about it here. But he said, well, whatever it is, did you do it? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, there's no problem then. I thought, okay, good. He said, go in there, tell the judge that you did it, you are prepared to take whatever punishment he sees fit to give you, and walk out of there with your head held high. You know? If you're a man enough to do it, you're man enough to do the time. And I thought, okay, I can do that. And that's exactly what I did. And the judge was very favorably impressed with my willingness to take full responsibility, and he had no problem whatsoever sending me to prison. And and so that was an interesting experience. And to be honest, it was a really good experience, and it's one that I'm glad I had. I don't feel I've never felt any shame, guilt, I never felt any negativity about it whatsoever. And interestingly enough, years later, I was able to do the same thing for someone else in my family who came to me with a similar situation with the law, and I passed along my grandfather's advice to him. Tell him, admit that you did it. Tell them you're happy to take whatever punishment they see fit to give you, and walk out with your head held high. So somebody says a bunch of outlaws in the Day family. You have no idea. I mean, first of all, my father is in federal prison. He's been in federal prison for I think he got sentenced to like 15 years. But what was funny was, long before that, years before that, one of my brothers was having the first dinner with his girlfriend's family. It was like the first time. It was like some, I don't know, Thanksgiving or something like that. And he really wanted to make a good impression. And so, he'd invited his girlfriend and her parents over. So they're coming over for dinner. And he was very careful to make sure that they were seated on the other side of the table from my dad and from one of my uncles who always get into these, would always get into these extended political discussions. And so he just wanted to make sure. But somehow the subject got turned to being arrested. And it turned out that me, unbeknownst to my mother, me and all of my brothers had been arrested at some point in time. And my mother didn't know about any of it. And of course, neither did my brother's girlfriend's parents, or my brother's girlfriend for that matter. So it was just kind of hilarious because, here they are, meeting meeting the entire family of what at the time was this very wealthy family. And all the young guys are talking about is when they were arrested. So, anyhow, and the punchline to all of this is that the last thing my grandfather said to me after he walked out is after I told him that, and he told me what I should do, and then he was walking out of the room, and they turned back and he said, "Just so you know, you're not the first guy to spend a few days in the brig." He was an old Marine, and it was pretty clear that he was speaking from personal experience. And so, he was a Marine's Marine, and so I have no doubt whatsoever that he got picked up on a disorderly charge when they were saying goodbye to the sailors on port one night, or more. But so that was what I learned from my grandfather. What I learned from my father was the importance of being true to yourself. My dad was he was kind of unusual. I mean, not kind of. He was an unusual man. He finished his PhD program at MIT, but he failed to turn it in because he was already working. He already had a good job. It had already served its the program had already served its purpose as far as he was concerned, and he didn't think that the work he had done on his thesis was significant enough, so he just never turned it in. It was kind of crazy because it was complete. All he had to do was turn it in, defend it, which he would have done successfully, and then he'd be able to put doctor in front of his name or something. And he never cared about that. Now, my mother was always kind of bitter about that, and I think fairly so. I would not have done that. I would have turned it in. But that he was true to himself in that regard. I don't think that he ever regretted not being a PhD. To him, it was just a label. What did it matter? It didn't matter. It had no impact on his life. And so, and in the same way, a lot of people don't realize that, when somebody like him goes to jail for tax evasion, I mean, it was so trivial, the amount of money that they were talking about. It was, I actually worked out the math at one point, and it was about, let me see, it was about the amount that he had, evaded on was about 1.6% of the amount that he had paid in. It was totally trivial. The whole thing was for him a matter of principle. Now he, unlike me, he was, my dad was very naive. Unlike me, he believed in the law. And so he wanted to fight it out. He wanted to sort it out and that sort of thing. Now obviously he learned his dismay that the government is not actually particularly interested in what the black letter law says. But, I was proud of him, I am proud of him, for going and fighting a battle that he believed in. It wasn't a battle that I believed in fighting, but, he had the courage of his convictions, and he went and did what he believed to be the right thing to do. And he didn't just do it for himself. He was doing it because he wanted to prove to people the truth. I mean, he was actually, in that regard, quite a bit like Irwin Schiff. And so, and the other thing that my dad has taught me, he actually taught me this since going to jail, is that it doesn't matter where you are or what circumstances you're in. You can find purpose and positive meaning in life. It was kind of funny. My dad told me, I think 2 years ago, that he was more respected in prison, in federal prison, than he ever was as the multimillionaire CEO of a tech company. I mean, that just sounds bizarre, right? How is that possible? And the reason is that he basically dedicated himself. He needed to find something to do. He wanted to, and in talking to the various other inmates, he found how many of them had been falsely convicted. A lot of the people that are in federal prison are not legitimately convicted. A lot of them are low IQ blacks who have had no ability to defend themselves. He's found case after case after case where the supposed criminal was not even in the correct state, the same state as the crime. Now some of these guys are not good guys. A lot of them are the type of people who, probably would commit such a crime. But the fact of the matter is they didn't commit that crime. And so I don't know what the total is up to now, but the last time that he had added it up, he had helped free convicted felons and get them out of a cumulative 1,100 years of prison. So you can imagine how much respect the other prisoners have for him. He's able to give some of them the one thing that's most valuable for somebody who's locked up, and that's to get them out. Now, obviously, this only works, for those who are either innocent or who are unjustly convicted. He's had situations where the public defender was drunk, slept through the entire trial. Just absolutely unconscionable violations of justice. So he's helping bad guys. Well, that's the point. Some of them may be bad, some of them are not. To put in perspective how well thought of he is, he's friends with the warden. He's probably the best educated guy in the entire prison, including all of the people who are on the security side, the guards, the wardens and stuff. Now, he could be sitting, we're talking about a multimillionaire who had everything he wanted, private plane, homes in Florida, multiple homes, nice cars, all that kind of thing. He threw it all away because he had a battle that he had to fight. He felt that he had to fight. And, he could sit there either beating up on himself, blaming everyone else, being bitter, all those sorts of things. He hasn't done that. He's found something to do that is positive, that's right, that is just. How can you not respect a man like that? I look like a guy who knows how to make puppets. I don't. However, my great uncle is super into making puppets. So, anyhow, so that's what I learned from my father. And, obviously I've learned many other things. But those are the things the lessons that have stuck with me. So what's the duty of a father? For me, the primary duty of a father is to make sure the traditions and beliefs of your family and of your kind, your people, are passed on. What you need to make sure is that they know what it is that you believe. They know what it is that is important to you. Now we all have different ways of doing this sort of thing. My dad really pushed Christianity on me. I gotta get rid of this guy, he's really annoying. Not that one. That one. So, my dad really pushed Christianity on me, and I really pushed back. And so with my own kids, I was quite a bit more laissez-faire. We weren't constantly making them go to church. We weren't saying, you have to do this. We weren't pushing it on them. And the interesting thing to me is that, they're definitely much stronger Christians at a younger age, and they're much more. They're just better people than I was at that age. Now, is it a cause and effect thing, or is it just how it happened to work out? I don't know. But regardless, the point is, no matter how you do it, you need to make sure that they understand what is important to you. I was talking to some folks today, and they were talking about how a friend of theirs, some friends of theirs were very upset because their daughter had ended up hooking up with some African, got pregnant by him, and then finally figured out that the guy was just a parasite or whatever, moved on, but now is, has this kid that they have to deal with that will significantly impact, how her life proceeds forward. Now, they're talking about what can you do about that? What can you do about it? And I said, you need to make sure that your children understand what your perspective is. Most parents are terrified of telling their children what their expectations are. If you're Chinese and you don't want your children dating white people, you need to tell them. You need to tell them what your expectations of a parent are for them. If you want your daughter to get married and have kids, then don't fucking tell her she has to get a great education and a great job all the frickin' time. Okay? This isn't rocket science. If you spend all your time pushing your daughter to get a great education and a great job, she is going to spend absolutely no time trying to figure out how to get married. All right? She is going to follow your lead, especially if it's in line with what the culture is pushing her towards. Sometimes people get horrified when you tell them that you don't believe that it's necessarily the right thing to, push maximal education on your kids. I always make fun of that. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to encourage. I'm really going to encourage my children to amass as much debt as possible, and hopefully, with a major. Don't repeat questions. That's obnoxious. If you push kids towards what the culture says is okay, they are going to assume that is what you want them to do. But if you don't want them to do what the culture says for them to do, you need to make sure they understand that. You need to make sure that your parental pressure is being exerted contra the cultural pressure. Now, there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees that you're not going to end. You can tell a kid just say no to drugs every single day, and the first day that they're out from under your thumb, they can go shoot up on heroin. Okay? On the other hand, there are things that you can also traumatize kids. I mean, if you actually showed young girls what the toll is when you burn the coal, that would probably qualify as child abuse, even though it was true and in a good cause. But the point is that whatever it is you want for your kids, whether it is if you want your daughter to maximize her education, get a job in academia, never get married and have no children, then you need to push her towards the things that will help her achieve that goal. Now, I think it's a stupid goal. I think it's a discivic and a dysgenic goal. But the point remains. You need to tell your children, you, the father, need to tell your children what your expectations are. And I don't give a damn if that means pissing the mommy off. Okay? If you're lucky, if you're fortunate, if you've chosen well, then you're going to be reinforcing the same method that your wife is. I would always ease off on pushing Christianity on people. You want to expose people to Christianity. You do not want to push them into it. You cannot make them accept it. But what you can do is you can give them positive examples. You talk about admirable Christians. You talk about how Christianity is positive. That's not Christianity pushing. That's Christianity exposing. You know, but the main thing that you can do is model it in your own life. Your words will never be as powerful as your actions. You know, and so, you know, if you tell your kid working hard is important, and all they do is see you sitting around with your feet up watching the television, guess what lesson they're going to learn? If you tell them, oh, you need to be healthy, you know, you should eat this because it's healthy for you, and this is good for you, and you're 30 pounds overweight, well, guess what they're going to conclude? You know, I mean, you know, my kids are all voracious readers. Are you surprised? You know, I actually have to tell one of my kids to stop reading on the stairs. You know, the only way I could get them to do it is I said, if you do that and you fall down, there's a good chance, you know, you'll break your nook. You know, that was finally enough to get them to stop doing it. You know, because you know the possibility of falling down and hurting themselves was not enough. Will you be mad if your kids end up in jail? Well, it depends what it's for. You know, I'm more concerned about morality and ethics than I am about specific legalities of any particular legal locale. You know, what's legal in Italy is not legal in Germany, etc., etc. And so, but the main thing is, as a father, is you need to make sure that they are clear on your expectations, your beliefs, and your traditions. If you have not passed those things on, you are a failure as a father. So, you know, and we're not guaranteed success as parents. You can do everything right and still end up a failure. But that doesn't matter. What if you have no traditions to pass on? Then make some. Find them. Look around you. Find the best traditions you can find. I mean, traditions get created all the time. My wife creates traditions that we now have. Sometimes we end up with a tradition that I didn't know was a tradition yet. You know? I mean, you know, there's people we spend certain holidays with that it's now a tradition that I had no idea for a couple of years. I finally asked my wife, how come we're doing this? Well, it's the tradition now. It's like, oh, well, okay then. You know. But the point is that there is value in these things. No, we're not having a Jewish Seder. I'm not actually entirely sure what a Seder is. Anyhow, it's funny. I grew up in church, stopped believing, but somehow I want to raise my kids in church. You should, but you should also make it clear what you believe. Don't lie to them. They'll figure it out. If you say, hey, you know, I can't seem to believe this myself, but I also believe this is important. That's better than lying to them. You know, I mean, for me, it's very easy to say, you know, this is what I believe. You know, not everything that I do and say. Have I given SJWs Always Lie to Your Kids? My son has read it. My oldest son has read it. The other kids have not. So, anyhow, there are challenging times ahead. There are difficult times ahead. As fathers, we need to make sure that our children are as ready for them as we can make them. That's our duty, that's our responsibility, and that's what I would charge every father who is watching this to make sure that you do. Happy Father's Day. Have a good evening.